should rename it to How to Manipulate People.
Cool. We'll start with that. Welcome to 50 Minute Friday, folks. This is a What You Don't Hear podcast. You heard his voice. I am sitting down one more time with my guest, Josh Emerick, a lover of manipulation, I heard.
A lover.
Did I hear that correctly?
Yep.
Well, you know what? On this episode, we luckily and thankfully are not talking about manipulating people. We are talking about how to be a positive influence to those around you. Now, that sounds kind of magical, kind of vague, kind of very like broad spectrum thinking, sort of. It's not really like a tangible thing, but I do think it can be broken down into tangible ways of doing that, right? And so I think the biggest part to almost begin with is to almost evaluate what kind of influence are you being to begin with? Because I think it's super easy for a lot of people to unknowingly be a negative influence on those around you. And I think when I say that, someone could be like, "No, it's obvious. If you're being rude, if you're manipulating people, if you're actively being negative, of course I know I'm going to be negatively influencing somebody." But I think there is some ownership to take in that, because there are ways to actually identify individual people and their relationship to you. Because I don't just think it's either I'm a bad person, so of course I'm negatively influencing all the people around me, or I'm a good person, so I must be positively influencing all the people around me. What I want to talk about is engaging in those individual relationships. What does each person need from you, and what does each person give to you? Because also identifying what you get out of a friendship, relationship with somebody, whatever it may be, that's also going to play a factor into how you influence them. If they're negative to you, you're probably not. You're going to be drained around them. You're not going to be as focused. You're not going to be excited to even be around them. So what's that going to do then? So that's one of my first things, is identifying, are you a negative influence or a positive influence? I say that because I have had to identify those things in the past, because I used to, and I try to get a control over this now. And when I'm doing it, I really try to identify, like, reel myself in. I used to project my wants and needs onto the people around me, or the people involved in something with me. I would project my wants and needs relatively often, especially with creative projects. That's probably the biggest thing, right? Is that I can operate on a level of like 10, right? I'm like, heck yeah, this is a dope idea. We're doing it. It's so much fun. It's so cool. I love it so much. And because you're here with me, I assume you want it as bad as I do. And in turn, what would happen in those scenarios is that situation wasn't actually a positive influence like it could have been. We're doing something fun. Of course, that sounds positive when you say it like that. But it actually turned into a negatively influenced situation, because when I wasn't taking the time to identify what's going on in this relationship, I didn't realize that my wants and needs were up here. My standard, my bar was up here. Theirs was somewhere over here. And that doesn't mean less than, that just means a different place than, right?
Yeah.
And so while I was being negatively affected by them saying, why don't they care as much as I do? What the heck is wrong with them? I'm just trying to be good. I'm trying to make cool things, whatever. At the same time, I know that they were saying those same things. Why is Ross always wanting to push so hard? Why is he asking so many questions? Why can't we just chill and relax? Why do we have to make it this all or nothing thing? So in turn, I was then, speaking from my perspective, not terrible, but I was in a way negatively influencing those people around me in those circumstances.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't taking a moment to kind of recollect, step back, and reevaluate. So when I talk about those sort of things, what comes to mind on your end? And I'm not saying examples, but just more so the explanation of it, of first identifying what kind of influence am I being in general in order to then build towards a positive influence that we hopefully want to be.
There are so many areas that you can go with influence. And I think I want to start with, you're influencing whether you want to or not. And I think that positive piece is only through intention. So you could want the best for someone, but it can be a negative influence, mostly because people have limiting beliefs about themselves. Mm-hmm. So asking permission to give that influence sometimes is the best place. And it's not saying like, hey, do I have the permission to influence you? That sounds horrible and
don't ever say that.
And awkward. But
say that.
Active listening. This is the muscle to develop if you truly want to influence someone.
Yeah.
It doesn't start with, hey, I'm an influential person and I'm so great. I'm so this. Stepping into leadership and running a business, it's not something I asked for. I just wanted to make creative art. I wanted to make great projects. But ultimately, I need to realize that my opinion, my level of excellence, the projects we've created, the experiences we've created, has created influence over the years on our crew, on our clients. So when you say like, their bar's here and your bar's up here, it's not that they don't want to become that. It's that they have a limited belief or what I would call intimidation.
Right.
So a lot of times by listening to them, understanding them, hearing their hesitations, the best thing that I can usually do when someone says to me, like, I don't see this in myself, it's reminding them of how great they are. Like I've worked with creatives before that are like, I feel really confident in this, or I feel really confident in that. And then I like to remind them, I'm like, you know why I like you as a person? It's for X quality. It's for this. Same thing with like businesses or bands that we've worked with. It's like, I don't work with you because you make great music. That's a byproduct. I don't work with you because you have an amazing culture. That's a byproduct. I work with you because you're respectful, because you care about people, and this is your unique superpower. So how do I influence you to care about your superpower, to massage that? It's not to say, I want to influence you to be me.
Yep.
And here's the thing, like that manipulation word, I joke around about that because it has a negative connotation, but this is literally what you're doing. You can use persuade, influence, manipulation. What I'm truly trying to get to is I'm trying to get the best performance, the best version for you to accept yourself. Influence to me is not, I want a B version of me. I want little minions of me.
Yep.
Influence to me is, how do I help you see yourself for the valuable person you are and put your value in you, not in trying to be a B version of someone else, not in your art, not in your craft, not in your projects and your portfolios, but how do you see that you're actually a beautiful human that has all this potential and you have these limiting beliefs? So shifting that mindset, it starts by listening. What are the hurdles that you have? What are the things in between the lines that I really need to listen to and understand to help massage some of this greatness out of you, to help you see yourself better than what you are? Because we all put up mental hurdles. I know I do. I know everyone else does. So if I'm built that way, we're all human. We all have common human problems. So to influence someone, it starts by listening.
Yep. And I love that you explained that trying to be a positive influence to somebody isn't influencing them to be like me, be like you, whatever. It's not let me influence you to become, like you said, a copy, a twin, a minion, whatever it is. It's how can I influence you to better believe in who you are? That's the version of influence that we're talking about. And those are the conversations that truthfully, like I mean, you know this, but just speaking it out loud is like, I love having those conversations with people. I love getting to sit down with somebody and have that, cliche, like, if you only saw yourself the way that I see you type of conversation.
Yeah.
And that sounds so grand and magical, but that is the power of influence, in my opinion. It's not, look how cool I am. You can be creative like me or freelance like me or entrepreneur. It's not any of that. Whether I'm doing any life coaching things or you're doing any business creative coaching things, it's not influencing in the sense of do what I did and do like I do. It's here's some experience that I'm sharing. Here's some advice, opinions that I'm sharing. And how can we uncover that?
How do you see yourself?
How do you see any of this in yourself? And where are we starting at? I love that you mentioned the limiting beliefs thing. And that was another major point that I wanted to make in this episode was being present. And I love that you brought up the listening point as well. It's almost like there's a purpose that we chose this subject to talk about, right? It's almost like
I've never listened before, so I don't know where that came from.
You have no idea about anything we're talking about. Clearly there was a purpose. But I love the idea of being present with that person, their wants, their needs. And I know you used kind of the standard thing earlier. Being able to identify where that is. And this does kind of trickle off of the idea of not projecting yourself onto them. But when you lean further into how can I be a positive influence to somebody, it's everything that you said. It's identifying where they are and meeting them there. Because it can become a negative influence if I'm operating on 10 and I'm living my life at 10 and you're maybe operating at like a 4 and I'm trying to influence you to live your life at 10 like me. What are you going to do? You're not going to necessarily be influenced to say, let's get up 6 more levels to get where you're at. You're just going to compare. You're going to sit and you're going to say, oh my gosh, that's not me. That's not my personality type. That's not like, why do they have the things that I don't? Like whatever it is. So I think there's so much importance. And this is something that I have luckily learned to do over the years. And I feel like I've always been able to do it, but I've become way more aware of it now, especially when I'm having, kind of a life coaching session with somebody, or I'm just sitting down and helping somebody through something, is meeting them where they're at. It's not about saying all these hype words and buzzwords of mindset and positive thinking and all this sort of stuff. It's not just throwing those around and then saying, cool, get started tomorrow. It's identifying where are you at right now? Where's my friend at that I want to help right now? Where's my whatever? Where are they at right now? Where's their bar? Where's their standard? Where's their limiting belief hitting? Where's that barricade up at? Doing that listening, actually sitting. And it's not just about, let me influence you to do the things that I do. Let me influence you to think the way that I think. Sure, I want that stuff to rub off if I can, again, in a positive way. But there's so much emphasis and importance on not just saying, oh, cool, I want to be a positive influence, and you can do positive things. You can work harder. Oh my gosh, you can do it. I know you can. Just believe in yourself. No. The real influence comes from helping somebody uncover how they can believe in themselves.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about being present with somebody, I know you already talked a good bit about like the listening and all that sort of stuff, but let's talk about that a little bit. How to be present with somebody that you want to be a positive influence with. What comes to your mind when we're talking about that?
So I think it's Adam Rifkin. He's referenced in a lot of books, and I think it's him that's coined this 5-minute favor thing. This has rubbed off on me in many ways because life is short. You don't know when people are going to be around or not around. You don't know what people need to hear. So learning to listen and understand who you're talking to before you make an influence. And then when you make that influence, it's just intention. It's thinking about that person. I like starting my day early, and I like having some time to myself as someone who has, a wife and kids and all that sort of stuff. And I run a business. I still like to give myself time to think. And what happens in those thoughts? I'll think about a friend, or I'll think about someone who could use this piece of information. And it's taking the time to have that 5-minute favor of like, I'm thinking of this person right now. And instead of just being like, that was a thought and it passed and I went on, it's making the time to say, I'm thinking about you. I care about you. Here's a piece of information, or here's something that I think you need to hear, or here's something I feel about you. I hope that you can do something with this. I'm here for you to talk to you. And that's opened up so many conversations with people to feel more trusting and more vulnerable, to go into those deeper conversations. If we're to get really deep, you can't make influence on someone unless you make enough emotional bids with them. So, I can't come in and say, like, tell me your deepest, darkest secrets the first time I meet you, because it's like, who are you? Why should I trust you? If you want to make an influence on someone, you need to show up. You need to be in proximity. You and I, we have a deep level of trust. And I like to think I have a deep level of trust with a lot of the people that we've come in contact with. That doesn't happen by accident. I love to talk. I'm genuinely curious. And when I get curious and I understand someone, not just waiting for my turn to talk and to say what I believe is right, I really want to understand, like, oh, this is what you're going through. I can maybe relate, or maybe I have a story, or maybe that's just, I don't actually understand that. Can you tell me more? Until we get to the layer, underneath the layer, underneath the layer, underneath the layer. And that comes from sharing back and forth. So as much as you need to listen, you need to be willing to be vulnerable yourself, to say, hey, I don't have it all figured out. As someone who's coaching, or someone who does video production, or whatever the case may be, I don't have all the answers, and I'm not afraid to say I don't have all the answers. What I am here for is to listen to you and guide you and put this in a direction that could be valuable to you. So here's what I'm hearing. Here's what I think we could do. And I'm gonna help be your guide. I'm gonna help walk you through this. And I'm gonna help you feel comfortable in the uncomfortable. So that's easier said than done. But so often it's just taking that time to think through, how can I be valuable to someone? How can I give someone some value right now? How can I offer you some insight? Just being helpful, being present, as much as listening can be really valuable.
So a couple of things came to mind in what you just said there that before we end up wrapping this show up, I really want to leave people with, or at least talk on. First, one of the things you said in there I think is vastly important. This is something that I consistently remind myself of, been doing it for years, and it spawns so many fun, positively influenced conversations. And that is the idea that whenever you think something nice of somebody, tell them.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy for us to, for sure, be scrolling through Instagram, tapping through stories, whatever it is. You see something that somebody did, shared. Doesn't matter if it's creative or normal life. They might have cleaned their kitchen and it looks cool. If you have the thought of, wow, their clean kitchen looks awesome, and man, that made me want to go clean mine. Or I love the color of their cabinets, or I love the color of their shirt. Whatever it is, if you think that, tell them. Because it's only going to provide a positive energy source between the two of you. It might not spark some big life conversation, but that's not the point. That's not the result. The result is, like you were saying, making a better connection with somebody. And sure, that might pop up at some other point, right? It doesn't matter if there's a real result that comes from it. So that was one of the big things that came to my mind is, yes, when you think something nice about somebody, make sure to tell them. Another thing that I think is vastly important in all of this, and maybe the final point we can make in this episode, unless there's some burning thing that you really want to talk about, is in order for us to positively influence other people, we must first positively influence ourselves, because you cannot pour from an empty cup.
Yeah.
And you and I have both been guilty of that over the years, where we're not exactly filling our cup up as quickly as we are emptying it out into everybody else around us, wanting to be those positive influences. But guess what happens? At some point when you're running on E, you no longer have the energy or the space or the mindset, whatever it is, to be that influence you want to be to any of those around you. So then in turn, okay, then we're not even doing the thing we wanted to do at the end of it, right? We're just running super hard. And yes, we're doing something good in helping others, talking to others, positively influencing others, whatever it is. But are we filling ourselves up in return? And I think that making sure that that figurative cup of ours is being returned to, is being filled. And I don't mean by the person you're giving to. It's not some give and take sort of thing. It doesn't have to be. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. But I think like that is the most important thing, is make sure that we are operating from a place of fulfillment. Because when we are focused more on ourselves, and maybe that's actually the real final point. I think that being selfish in times where we need to be selfish, to work on ourselves, to focus on ourselves, to better develop ourselves, live the version of the life that we want to live. When we're being selfish in that way, it's not exactly selfish, it's actually service. You in turn are becoming selfless, because we have filled ourselves up. We've given ourselves the space, time, and opportunity and energy to give to those around us. We can be a better version of us for those people that we want to be positive influences for. So it does, in turn, to influence those around us. It does still, to just kind of bring this back, the real key is to be a positive influence for yourself first. Any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
I couldn't say that much better, but I'll bring it back to the listen. It's like, so much of making that influence and loving myself, back in the day when I was in a much darker place. And I still do this to this day. It's maintenance at this point, but it did begin with listening to a podcast, listening to a book, listening to friends, getting to understand myself, listening to my body a little bit better. So it's giving to yourself, then giving to others. And I heard this somewhere else, but I think this is kind of an important thing to think about too, is I think so often we don't give ourselves that permission because it feels selfish. But, if you look at any film that deals with time travel, what's the constant obsession? You can't change even the smallest thing in the past, because if you do, it'll change the future. What small thing could you do today in your life? Because I don't think we put enough value on the small things we can do in life. Realizing that, okay, if we're so obsessed with moving a plate or interacting with a person or whatever in these films in the past is going to change the future so drastically, well, what are these small things you could be doing today that could positively impact? Maybe that's just giving yourself 30 minutes in the morning to have your you time, to enjoy that coffee, get some sunshine, whatever that looks like. Give yourself the permission to love yourself so that you can be a positive influence on yourself, so that you can make influence on other people in a positive way.
I love it. That, in my opinion, was a wonderful 15-minute Friday. So
Strong
Josh,
opinion.
Strong, that big opinion there. I wouldn't go that far. Josh, if people want to talk to you more about any of this, maybe they want to be positively influenced by you in some way. You've also talked about the coaching stuff that you do as well. Where can people seek you out online?
Well, if you just want to talk to me, I'm very active on Instagram at jmemerick. If you're interested, if you're a business owner, you're a creative service provider or whatever, those tend to be my people. I love doing coaching. I love working with people, helping them unlock that mindset, working them through different things. That can be found over at tealcollar.com. That's THEAL collar.com. And, we have creative services, creative assets, and we have a whole coaching program, personal and a mastermind. So, yeah.
Love it. So, yes, find Josh, find all the things around the internet. If you'd like to find me around the internet, I am at Ross Theisen. I truly cannot emphasize enough how willing I am to have conversations like this with you. Let me put some of this to work, right? Let me put all this stuff that I'm saying to work. I want to be a positive influence to people however I possibly can. So, yes, absolutely reach out at Ross Theisen. Or, of course, if you don't want to talk to me, but you do want to listen to me talk to more people, follow the show at WYDH Pod.